Oh yeah. Managed to manipulate our schedule to where we could have all the kids all together at once, which is nice. But definitely after having all of them together, we need that week off to kind of recoup and prepare for the following week. So it's been a lot, but it's been good.
Awesome. Well, just a lot of work, drill, and kids getting used to having older kids now. Kids that are working, driving, other stuff like that. It's weird. So
I have a question for you, Houston.
yeah.
How was last night? Did you go out drinking again with the guys or what?
No, why?
Just want to prepare ourselves for the for
Oh
the show.
no,
If it was anything that we were gonna
no, it was.
encounter like
It's not
last time.
another hangover show. No, as I'm drinking my recovery, I'm still recovering from that last week. So no drinking, not right now. Hmm. Yeah, that's good every once in a while, but we're not young anymore. We have to recover now.
No,
We
good
can't just
grief. I
wake
know.
up and go to work.
No, can't do anything. Like I feel like I have to wake up and like do yoga just to make it through my day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's old bastards.
Yeah. Well, that's just how the thing went. So um, how it started up for us. Um, so let's see which one to start off with first. Let's go with let's go with Brett and Bulldog SummerSlam '92. All right. So this match is always been highly regarded as one of the best intercontinental title matches. It was a one of the very few times that the intercontinental title main evented a show. I don't think prior to this that had ever been done yet. I could be wrong. Someone might fact check me on that, but this was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, international show done by WWE at this time inside Wembley Stadium. Apropos that in a couple of months, we have another big company going back to Wembley Stadium for the second year in a row with All In. We know what I'm talking about there. But let me tell you about this match. This is where Bret Hart and the Bulldog kind of get into a tiff, all because of Bret's sister, Diana, who is the Bulldog's wife. Um, she's kind of torn because both of these guys are vying for the Intercontinental title. And so she's not quite sure which one to root for. And that kind of sets both competitors a little awry. Like they're like, well, wait a second, I'm your brother. Well, I'm your husband. So it doesn't kind of set well with both of them. Something to be said about this match. Bulldog, we had seen in interviews and podcasts before. Brett has talked about it as well. Bulldog was completely trashed during this match, was incoherent, like just completely drugged up. There's just no other way to say it, unfortunately. However, he was coherent enough to get through this match, which coincidentally, this match lasted almost 40 minutes, and to be in the condition that he was and still to be able to perform to the degree that he was able to, albeit with Brett's help, this match had a lot of rest holds that just really kind of set up the next sequence. And then it was kind of like, all right, we're going to do this, this, this. All right. And then go back into the rest hold. And then they did that repeatedly. This match, I put to very similar, like Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania 18. There was a lot of basic moves, a lot of basic holds, but they didn't need to do a whole lot because the crowd was absolutely nuts for the Bulldog in this match. They liked Brett as well. There wasn't really a whole lot of a line drawn in the sand between who you're going to cheer for and who you're going to, boo. Nobody was really getting booed. It was more so of like, yeah, Brett's good. We like him, but the Bulldog is our guy. And it was another case of one of these times where if you just put the match on mute, there wasn't really anything too special about this match. This match was really, really good, but for basic standards, but they didn't need to do a whole lot. And I think that was kind of telling too, that Brett's like, all right, this crowd is white hot. We don't need to hit one out of the park. We don't need to do anything over the top. We just need to do a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and we're good. And that's exactly what happened. This matchup was very technically sound, but not anything like outside of the norm. I'm just kind of reading my notes a little bit, bullet points. There wasn't a whole lot of structure to it. Like this is something that a Bret Hart match that we've noticed before. Like Bret Hart has his matches to where there's purpose and a methodical way of doing things. Like everything had a purpose. Like I'm going to do this to set this up, to set this up, to set this up. Well, like I said, with Bulldog in this particular instance, you can only really do so much. But this match is kind of very telling of how great Bret is of being a ring psychologist and being able to read a crowd, read an audience without doing a whole lot. So, and with the finish, I've always kind of thought Bulldog winning on a roll-up was kind of a weak finish. But knowing where the company's stance was at the time, like these were two huge babyface competitors, and they didn't really want to make one look less than the other. So a just like a quick roll-up, I got you, just for a split second was a good way to kind of keep both guys strong and put the title on someone else. And so that we could get Bret into that world title picture going forward right after this. Oh, see, I didn't even see the timer. All right. Let's see, Mr. Notepad here. All right, Mr. Perfect. All right, so this is in the part where Mr. Perfect has got a coach accompanying him to a ring, which was pointless as pointless could be because Kurt Hennig was as a great competitor he didn't need someone like a coach. Now, a Bobby Heenan as his manager, that was something that we found out later on that worked really well with him. But coach here, just not something that worked really well for him. This matchup with Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title is one of the top Intercontinental title matches. You go back and watch this match. This match has a great back and forth. This match makes both competitors look very, very strong. It is a very classically done wrestling match. Again, with both competitors, and we know Kurt Hennig's ability in the AWA as an AWA champion, how well manicured he is as a wrestler. And so these guys both, whenever they had the offensive momentum, everything that they were doing was, as I mentioned earlier, was to set up something else. It had a purpose to it. So it's like, I'm doing this to set this up because I'm trying to do this. Like I mentioned it before, Derek, with you off air, is like Bret Hart, his finish is a sharpshooter. So everything that he does in his match, if you watch a lot of Bret Hart matches, he works the legs, and with the idea of weakening the legs so that when I slap that sharpshooter on, like, you've got nothing left in your legs, that you've got nowhere to go. You got no choice but to tap out because your legs are done by that point. So interesting note, we start getting closer to the finish of this match. Kurt Hennig hits the perfect plex. Now, by all accounts, this match is over at this point. Nobody has kicked out of the perfect plex until Bret Hart right here. This was the very first time the perfect plex had been kicked out of. Kurt was beside himself, like didn't understand why that wasn't it. But after Bret kicked out, I mean, we were cruising along. Bret Hart had all the momentum up there, and it was just nonstop. There was a part where even the coach, and this was really the only purpose at any point that this coach served, was he got up on the apron that served a momentary distraction to stop that momentum. And this was where Kurt tripped up Bret Hart and started to try and take some momentum, but he had done a split leg drop, split Bret's legs, and like did a leg drop on the midsection. And the referee was kind of like, hey, you're getting really close to the low section there. And Kurt's like, no, my foot's hitting the midsection right there. So he goes to do it again. But when he drops the leg, Bret catches it. And they did a really good job on the camera angle to where you could see Bret do it. Bret catches the leg, takes Hennig's other leg, throws it over him, and then Bret rolls over. By that point, Bret stands up and he's already locked in a sharpshooter position at that point. It was a fantastic way to set up the finish. And Kurt, by that point in time, was an immediate submission. And Bret, like, even put some torque on that. He had like all more momentum. This was, by all accounts, a fantastic match, voted one of the best matches on that pay-per-view that year. This was even the pay-per-view that had the where we didn't have a match for the main event. We had a wedding, if you can recall that, back at SummerSlam 91. The only thing that I would say that was negative about this match was that Roddy Piper and Bobby Heenan and Gorilla on commentary in a three-man booth. Most of this match, Piper and Heenan are just bickering back and forth with each other. It's almost like, good God, would y'all stop talking so I could just watch this great match? And you could hear some of the frustration that Gorilla was just like, you two get a room or something like that. Like, I just don't want to hear y'all talk anymore. It's like this. It was bad. Comical, and I guess in some way they were trying to serve some purpose, but that's the only thing that I would say that took away from watching this, back at the moment. If you're watching it in the moment, you were served up a great, fantastic, technical, classical style match, and at the Garden, nonetheless. This was a Garden show, so what a place for Bret Hart to get that first Intercontinental title win. Oh, see, I see. I can't even see the timer on this one. We're on Restream tonight, so not seeing the timer like we traditionally would if we were on our other platform. Nah, it's all right. No one's really watching for us anyway.
Yes, indeed. The Iron Man match. It was March 31st, 1996. A day that will live in infamy. Art was made that day. Okay. All the other matches you've been hearing about were good Bret Hart matches. But if you want to hear about two stars colliding in the sky, that was the Iron Man match. It takes a certain bit of refinement to appreciate everything that was done in this match. And everything was done in this match because it was a freaking hour long. But it was excellent, every bit of it. So the lead up, the story to WrestleMania 12. The story going into it was Bret Hart is the fighting and defending champion. Okay. He's more experienced, well-rounded, and Shawn Michaels is still the up-and-comer, kind of the hothead, arrogant, young challenger who thinks he's at the point where he can beat the champion. And this had all the pageantries you needed, too, leading up to it. I mean, you had Shawn Michaels coming out of the rafters, kind of ziplining down, that, an iconic entrance being made. And then you had Bret Hart, not as much pageantry for him. He just kind of came out there. But the story was Bret was treating this as he was cool, calm, collected. You could even see it in all the intros. He was waving to the fans, winking to the fans. It seems like he was just another day in the office where Shawn Michaels looked like a ball of nervous energy. You could tell the weight of the world was on his shoulders. And they went the whole spiel. But every bit of this match, it was almost like there were several matches back to back to back. The first match being Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart trading off basic wrestling exchange, where Bret Hart would get the better of Shawn Michaels, but then Shawn Michaels would reverse it. No, I can do it better than you. And at the end of it, Shawn Michaels would get the better of Bret at every time. And then after about the 15-minute mark, they started picking up the pace a little bit. Because the story was, well, Shawn Michaels is known more of the Mexican style of wrestling, and that's what they were calling it on television. But he hasn't really done too much of that. He's just been out wrestling Bret, which is kind of getting Bret furious. So Bret started picking up the pace, and that's where Shawn Michaels started busting out the Hurricane Ranas and more of the fast-paced movements. And as he started getting the better of Bret, it's like Bret said, well, I got to go to something else. So Bret tried to start finagling the rules. Now, at the very beginning of this match, they made it very clear. If you don't answer a 5 count, as far as letting a hold go, he's going to disqualify you right then and there. And you can lose the title by countouts and disqualifications. So you have to abide by the rules. And Earl Hebner, who's the most redneck referee, I wish they had never put him on the mic because he kept saying wrestling. All right, you're wrestling. You are competing for the World Wrestling Federation. Now you got 60 minutes of wrestling you're going to be doing. It's like, God damn it. Don't give that guy a mic, okay? But anyway, so this is the point where Bret's trying to see what he can get away with. So he tries backing up Shawn Michaels the corner, maybe giving an elbow that Earl can't see. You're starting to see where Bret, he's like starting to get frustrated. He's like, I'm going to bend the rules just a little bit. And Shawn Michaels fight backs at every bit of it. The last half of this match shows where Bret Hart gets a little low blows, little cheap shots here and there enough to where now he's in full control. And now he's just trying to finish off Shawn Michaels. But every time he thinks he has him beat or he goes for the sharpshooter, Shawn Michaels finds a way to get out of it. Shawn Michaels finds a way to kick out of it. Or maybe Bret's a little lackadaisical with the cover, which he thought he has it in the bag, and Shawn Michaels kicks out of it. And then the last 10 minutes is more of a frantic. Bret Hart is trying to beat this guy down and finish him off by going for sharpshooter after sharpshooter, and there's many exchanges and counters. At one point, I see Shawn Michaels. He has Bret Hart down for a little bit. He's trying to go up for a cross body block, and Bret Hart happens to get up, and it looks like he's just standing there. It's like, oh, he's just kind of giving it away. But no, he's selling that he's trying to trap him in for a power bomb, and he traps him in for a power bomb into a sharpshooter. And Shawn is able to get to the ropes. In another one, Shawn Michaels is able to maneuver almost a hurricane run off the top rope into another pinfall cover, and then Bret kicks out. So it's like no matter what Bret does, Shawn Michaels has an answer for it or is able to get out of it. And then at the last minute, he gets him in a sharpshooter. Last couple seconds going down, and bell rings. Bret thinks he wins, but he doesn't. And he's like, well, Shawn didn't beat me. I'm out of here. But Gorilla Monsoon is on the sidelines, the newly appointed president. He comes in and is like, nope, there has to be a decision. So Bret reluctantly gets back in the ring, and they last couple of minutes are just frantically trying to get their finish on the other guy. Bret Hart just makes one snap mistake where he gets caught just long enough to get hit with Sweet Chin Music. They're both down because Shawn has been beaten down at this moment, and they're slowly getting back up. And as they both get to their feet, Shawn hits one more time another Sweet Chin Music, and that's a 1, 2, 3, end of the match. And it was a beautiful and great match. I still love it to this day. It's not something you can watch every day or maybe even ever so often, but it's something that if you go back and you kind of erase, like, I know this is going to go for at least an hour without a pinfall. If you go into it like the way everybody's thought, we don't know when there's going to be a pinfall or disqualification. It's great, and it's captivating every moment of it. It's hard to do that for an hour, but I think they succeeded in it, and they really put on a clinic. The only thing that spoils it, if anything, at the very end, I mean, Bret did his damnedest, and he did an excellent job. I think Bret does his best when he's a heel. I don't know how. He's not the biggest guy, but he is a great heel, and he worked for Shawn to make him look like $1 million, and so did Shawn. But at the very end, you can hear Shawn Michaels say, tell that, I don't know if he said bastard or motherfucker, get the fuck out of my ring. Get to tell that. So yeah, I know he said something not so nice. He said, get that son of a bitch, tell that son of a bitch to get out of my ring. Kind of ruined the moment because you can kind of tell. And Earl's like, you really want me to tell him? Because he's trying to held on the belt. He's like, tell him to get out of my ring. So Earl's like, hey, Bret, you got to get out of here. And Bret kind of looks up like, are you fucking serious after everything I did? And he goes over, and you can tell just the camera shot. Shawn Michaels is not making any eye contact with Bret, and Bret's just staring a hole through him. And Bret finally does leave, and that just kind of spoils it just a little bit. I think if there would have been a handshake, I think it would have put the cherry on top here, But I think the little bit of as much as I love Shawn Michaels, and I do love me some Shawn Michaels, his attitude was his biggest killer, and I think it killed a little bit of that finishing touch of a moment. But great match, once in a lifetime. So an actual once in a lifetime type match. That's okay. It was an Iron Man match. God damn it.
It's one of the longest matches in history. I think Houston could be allotted a little bit more extra overtime.
Oh, I had that one too. Okay. So this one, as we go from that artistic match, we go into a match that's a lot more showcases how Bret, I think, can get people over and can, because here's the match, how they had it played out. Undertaker was a babyface at this point in time. Okay. He was doing the whole creatures of the night, looking back, it's kind of weird, that kind of thing, that dynamic, but it worked. They were in London, and the crowd loved them some Undertaker, and they hated Bret. I mean, they absolutely hated Bret. And you're wondering, how can somebody like Bret work as a heel, against the Undertaker? Well, this match leading up to it, they just come off SummerSlam, where Shawn Michaels was the referee for Undertaker versus Bret Hart, and Undertaker was the champion at the time. And at the very end of the match, Shawn Michaels was supposed to be impartial, but at the very end, he tried to, he was supposed to be impartial. And the whole gimmick was, if Bret Hart loses, he's never going to wrestle for the championship again. And then if Shawn Michaels is impartial and he favors The Undertaker, then he never gets to wrestle for the championship again. And at the very end, Shawn Michaels looked like he was going to just take Bret's head off. Bret ducks at the last minute, hits Undertaker, and then Bret goes for the pin, and Shawn Michaels reluctantly counts to 1, 2, 3. So now we're having the rematch, so Undertaker can try to get his championship back. So Undertaker's a babyface. And in this, Bret said he was going to be a technical wrestler and out wrestle. Well, Undertaker doesn't give him a chance. He just kind of corners him and just starts beating the shit out of him. So, like, Undertaker is just like the stalking monster in this. And you're wondering, like, how is Bret Hart going to try to out wrestle him? Well, every chance he gets, Bret is just trying to chop down the tree by going after his knee, and he's finding new ways. Now, it takes a while. Undertaker is very much on top of Bret, and it's very slow and methodical, very pacing. Every move means something. Even Undertaker butts out a bunch of heart punches in here, and they look devastating. Bret Hart even tries to cheat at one point where he tries to take the turnbuckle off. But when he finally tries to use it on the Undertaker reverses it and whips him into the turnbuckle. So everything is backfiring on Bret. It's like Bret's getting into his own head because he's trying to be heel. He's not being the old Bret. And so anyways, it finally turns around when Undertaker tries to careen into the turnbuckle and his knee runs into it. And from then on out, Bret was just trying to chop down the tree. He was doing figure 4 around posts, wrapping it around posts. Every chance he's just going after that knee. And Undertaker is literally have to fight from underneath to get back into the match. And the crowd is eating it up every time. Finally, Undertaker, when he's able to stand, and that's all he really does is just stand up, the crowd goes wild. He hits a choke slam, and the crowd is going nuts. And then the very end of the match, what may take away from this match, he goes for a tombstone. As he's going into the tombstone, Bret grabs the ropes, and he hangmans himself, kind of like how Mick Foley used to do. And as he's sitting there hangmanning himself in the ropes, Undertaker's hitting him a couple of times, and the ref calls it's a disqualification. And so the match ends in a disqualification. Bret Hart retains, which is kind of BS, I thought. And Undertaker's pissed at everybody. He goes after Bret. Bret's hightailing out of there with Owen, getting out of there. And then as Undertaker's chasing Bret, the announcer says, and the winner by disqualification, Bret. And then Undertaker looks behind him like, you called that out. And now he's going after the announcer. The announcer's running out into the crowd. So Undertaker's just pissed at everybody, and the crowd is pissed too. So it was a good match. It was good psychology, or like, how is Bret going to work it? And he did. He made the Undertaker seem like the underdog at a certain point and having to make a comeback. And that's remarkable. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a SummerSlam match, so I got it. This match is pretty good, but let's start with the story here. This is a storyline that started all the way back to the previous November 1993 at the Survivor Series. The Hearts are in a traditional Survivor Series elimination match, and Owen is the only Hart eliminated on his team. Now, he places blame on Bret as to why or how he got eliminated, but when the Hearts are celebrating after the match, Owen comes back out seemingly to celebrate the win, but comes back and starts pointing the finger at Bret. And it kind of seems like there's a little bit of trouble there, but we kind of get past it. It seems like that. At the following Royal Rumble, Bret and Owen tag together for the tag titles against the Quebecers, and this is the first time that Owen could become a champion. And so this is a big deal to Owen, but Bret sustains a storyline injury and then takes the pin in the match. And so Owen blames Bret for him not having a championship, and so he attacks Bret. And this is the storyline that leads into WrestleMania 10. That WrestleMania 10 match that year was kind of interesting because that was where we had 2 world title matches on the card for WrestleMania. If you remember, Yokozuna was the champion, and that was Bret. and Lex Luger were the co-champions of the Rumble that year. And so when they couldn't decide who was going to be the guy for the going to be the challenger, they were like, oh, both of them are. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, both of them will have their match one-on-one. And so but Brett had 2 matches that night as well. They kicked off that show with him and Owen wrestling each other, and Owen won. And so later on in the night, when Brett wins the world title, everybody's celebrating. Owen comes out and looks at him like, I beat you. Like, that should be me. Like, that should be me. I should be champion. So go a little bit further. We go into King of the Ring, Bret Hart versus Diesel. Jim Neidhart comes out and helps Bret Hart retain the championship by disqualification. Later on in the night, helps Owen win the King of the Ring tournament. And then aligns himself with Owen as part of the family. And it's so that Owen can challenge Bret for the title. And then this is all leading up to a cage match at SummerSlam. This is to keep Neidhart out of the ring. This is to keep both guys in and just have a clear-cut winner. Now, there was something strange about this match that I noticed as I was rewatching it, was that the only way to win this match was to escape the cage. This was not a what we're accustomed to now, where you can have a pinfall or submission as well as escaping the cage. This is the old blue cage, and that was the only way to win, was to escape. And let me tell you, these 2 guys were doing everything they could to dive, dodge, everything, climb to get out of that cage. It was almost like they didn't want to fight each other so much as just win the match. It's like, if all I got to do is escape the cage, like, why do I want to spend my time beating you down? And all I got to do is get out. But it was at every moment, somebody was cutting off the other. And there was this one part that I had watched over like 3 times because it was just ridiculously funny. Brett is starting to crawl through the door, and Owen is like on the other side of the ring, and he makes this cartoonish, like superhero, like dive full-fledged in the air and like grabs a hold of Brett's foot. And they were pulling each other back, and the other one would jump over the other one. And they just went through this sequence of just like pulling the other by the foot, yanking him back and diving and jumping over him, trying to back and forth, back and forth. And it went on like maybe 3 or 4 rotations. It was funny. That was actually the comedy spot, in my opinion, of the whole match. These guys put on a pretty good match for a cage match that's only by escape. You had, there was a part where Brett had slingshotted Owen into the cage, and this cage didn't budge. And we've heard stories about that old cage and how unforgiving it was on Bruce's podcast before. But something that's notable is Jerry Lawler hates the Hart family, but loves Owen Hart. But he just trashed Stu and Helen Hart the whole time during that match, and saying how biased Helen was. And he was like, Stu doesn't even know where he's at. He can barely speak. And there was this part, and I forgot to mention this in the perfect match, but the moment's kind of passed, but it's about commentary. But the finish of the match with Owen is where both of them are starting to climb over the cage. And they had done everything to each other about cutting each other off, holding on to each other's hair, legs, arms, and pulling the other guy back in. Well, Owen is basically on the other side of the cage at this point. Brett grabs his hair, and then he climbs over himself, and they're just trading blows back and forth. And I'm watching this now going like, well, why are you trying to punch the guy? Because if you knock him down, you lose. But when they start trading punches back and forth, Owen's leg gets caught up and slides through one of the holes in the old cage. And then he's hanging upside down on the cage. And when Brett sees that Owen is hanging upside down, he falls down to the outside and retains the championship off of that match.
Awesome. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's a hard match. You know, tribute shows, because there's a bunch of good tribute shows. Unfortunately, we've had several of them in wrestling. but there's some good matches that come out of them. But it's always hard to do because a lot of these, there's not a lot of storyline leading up to the storyline, is they just want to wrestle to pay tribute to their friend. So Bret Hart got to choose anybody, and he chose Chris Benoit, which was, of course, an excellent choice. Now, I'm going to have to restrain myself to make inappropriate comments because it's a Chris Benoit match. So I'm going to be on my best behavior here. Okay.
I'm just going to mute my mic now.
Okay. But it was a very excellent match. But to start off with, okay, first, to introduce everything, we have Harley Race out there. Now, Harley Race is an excellent wrestler, and I've seen several of his older matches, and I love him, and I love the guy. And he should have just came out there to say this next match is in tribute to Owen Hart, who's a good friend and somebody we all loved, and that should have been it. He should not be an announcer, because of the same somber tone, he was like, tonight we're going to honor a good friend, Owen Hart, is the same way he announced all the competitors coming out, which made you think like they're about to die. Well, one of them might have, but they were about to. I mean, he's not an announcer. He shouldn't be an announcer. He should have handed off the mic, and that should have been the end of it. Harley Race. So, but anyways, so that kind of took a little bit away of it. Chris Benoit comes out, and then Bret Hart comes out, and this is just a technical masterpiece. Whereas all the other ones we were talking about, they all have their different flavors of how Brent goes out there. This is Bret and Chris Benoit trying to outdo each other with technical ability, and everything is sharp, crisp, snappy. They're doing maneuvers to get out of different maneuvers that I can't even describe because it's hard to follow how quick and sharp everything was. This was very hard hitting. They took a lot of leeways with it, with each other, but there was action nonstop, and it kept you hooked the entire time. Even though there was no storyline leading into it, they didn't need one because they just told a great story of two friends trying to outdo the other one to honor their brother or friend. I mean, there was a couple of sharpshooters. I didn't know how he pulled it out, but he turned something out of nothing into a sharpshooter, and then Chris Benoit did the same thing, turning the sharpshooter into a crippler crossface. And it's like, how do you get from one point to the other? But they found a way to do it. It's this gnarly headbutt, and I'm full force. And I just was thinking, like, he's got to stop that or he's going to kill himself eventually. I mean, he did, but I mean, that's beside the point. It looked nasty. It looked nasty. Yeah. But eventually Bret Hart gets the win. And they honored, their brother Owen, and it was a really touching match. It was a really technical match. It's a great match to go back and watch. So, yeah, I was pretty restrained on that one.
8. Let's do it to it.
I can see a little wheel.
All right, I am going in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, not at all.
Absolutely.
Already. You're going to have to tell me because I can't see it. It's tiny like something else.
I can't read it. Yeah. Mm.
All right.
Okay. Interesting. Mm.
Mm.
Okay.
Ew.
Mm. Okay. Jesus, that could have been the
No,
finals.
that should have been in some ways. Like, this is this is one of the reasons why I like the way we do it, but hate it at the same time.
Yeah, I think
Man.
maybe they should be seated. Yeah. Well, got to do it. Yep.
Yep. Well, either way, regardless, there'd always be one last left standing.
Yeah.
All right.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Chris Benoit versus Roddy Piper. Let's start with that one.
Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. No.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and take the next one. Since a couple of different things I forgot to mention though in this match. You talked earlier about Bobby the Brain Heenan kind of, or no, you were talking about Jerry Lawler. Everybody always talking about Stu. Same thing still happened even in this match. Now we're honoring Owen Hart, but people, Bobby the Brain Heenan still badmouthing Stu Hart in this. I'm like, and like you can tell the other commentators like, he just lost his son. Give him the break. What is wrong with you? You know, like in the middle of the match too. Also, Bobby the Brain Heenan. What was the freaking joke he told about Stu? Oh, he said this. He said, "Do you think Stu's watching this match at home?" And they're like, what? Yeah, probably. Yeah. And I heard he's only got 2 payments left on the TV and he owns it. So like, what is wrong with you? Like, seriously. And I mean, it's just, it takes away. So that's the only thing. Like, Bobby doesn't understand when to be serious. I think if any time that would be the time to be serious, but he's like, nah, I'm just, and at the very end, the whole match is over. And, Mike Tenay is over there. I think this was an excellent match. It was really good. And then Bobby's like, yeah, I need a shower. I'm like, what do you?
Yeah, I think Bobby might have just been trying to make light, just trying to bring some not necessarily comedic, but just trying to, like, everybody knew what that match was, like it was a tribute, and I think everybody was just so downtrodden of the whole thing that he was just trying to bring up, like, make a laugh, trying to bring people up
that might be
from
true.
The situation. So
that might be true. But so as far as what I'm going, I just wanted to put that because I found that kind of odd. But if it's from my standpoint, I always love excellent technical wrestling, and I don't doubt that WrestleMania 8 was an awesome match to go back and watch, and really appreciate Piper for what he can do, which I know he's a great wrestler. He's just more known for his talking ability. But I just appreciate the Benoit and Hart match just because, Brett didn't get too many really good matches in WCW too.
No.
And no, not at all. Like no. Maybe that might be an understatement what I just said, but
well, he said recently what he thought about his WCW run. If you've been watching Who Killed WCW, he didn't have some not so kind things to say.
Yeah, if he spoke at their eulogy, I think he said, what I'd say at WCW's eulogy, thanks for nothing, go fuck yourself. So
yeah, that's exactly what he said.
But I love the technical wrestling. I love the hard-hittingness of it. And I loved it. I mean, like I said, I saw some stuff in there I couldn't describe because it's just so fast-paced, and I cannot tell how they did some of the stuff they did. So I'm going to pick that one.
All right, cool. All right, I was prepared for that on this one. All right, so I used to have a VHS tape. That is an old video medium for you young kids that are maybe watching or listening. But this VHS tape was the greatest WrestleMania matches, and there was 4 matches on this tape. It was a tag match between the Steiners and the Headshrinkers of WrestleMania 9. It was the Intercontinental title match between Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat. It had Hogan and Andre, and it had Brett and Piper from WrestleMania 8 on there. Now, at the time I had this VHS tape, it probably might be 1995. So at this time, we're probably looking around WrestleMania 11, WrestleMania 12. Okay, so there wasn't a whole big thing to take from at that moment. Now, that match with Piper, like I said, considered at the time to be a great Intercontinental title match. But as we said, that match was considered to be one of the greatest WrestleMania matches at that moment. I think, however, this match with Benoit was more of a technical showcase. And this was like 2 guys that could go out there and really go for a long time and really show their stuff. And I think in this particular match, they kind of went out there of like, let's go show these guys, these characters, how you wrestle. And that's really what I felt like they were out there to do, and do it for the fallen brother, literally, for one of them. And then, like you mentioned, Houston, Piper's more known for his talking abilities, one of the best promos ever of all time. He is a great wrestler. He's a great performer as well, but he's at least more known for his mic skills. If we're talking about matches, just matchups right here, I think this particular matchup between these two, I'm going to have to go with the Benoit match. Next up on our bracket, we have got the SummerSlam 92 between Brett and Bulldog going up against the one night only of Brett and The Undertaker. Well, here, I'll start since I'll go first. I'll go first. So since I had that match, like as I said before in my analysis of this match, this Bulldog match was something that has been highly regarded as a very good, well-paced, well thought out wrestling match, placated to the fans, the audience in attendance very well. It depends on how you want to go about this. Do you want to go with the match itself, or now knowing what we know about how that match went down and what everything went into it, where Brett really was with somebody who was not all there literally in the moment and was able to say, hey, on the fly, that, hey, do this, and then we're going to do this. Okay, wait a second. Then we're going to do this and this, and did that for like a 40-minute time frame. Like that's really kind of telling about how good Brett is in the ring and with his psychology and his technical abilities. So if you want to go that route, I mean, it would be the Bulldog match all day long. If you want to go with story and somebody who really plays off of a heel babyface dynamic very well, I mean, you'd have to look at the Undertaker match. That was one of my favorite stories for longest time, especially up to that point. I mean, I'd only been watching wrestling for maybe about 2 or 3 years up to that point, but I was fully invested in that story, and I hated Bret Hart, and I really wasn't the biggest Undertaker fan, but I really didn't want Bret Hart to win that match. And the fact that Bret won was just not necessarily devastating, but it just really irked me. So I think it just kind of depends on which way you want to go with it. You know, I'm going to look at it from this standpoint. Like I said previously, I think the Bulldog match I'm going to pick because of how Bret was able to basically kind of do everything on his own. And if we're kind of looking at his best match, let's take a look at his best work. And you know, and sometimes we've talked about your match is only as good as how good your partner is. And in this case, you know, his partner wasn't the best, but still to go out there and put together a match essentially on his own, and it still be highly regarded as it is, I think is very telling to his ability. And so I'm going to take the Bulldog match because I think it was his best work doing something on his own.
Well, I think, yeah. Well, I was going to echo the same sentiment. So I think me and Trent are on the same wavelength here. I'm looking at as both these matches kind of showcase Brett's ability to make something that you wouldn't think would work and work. You know, with the Undertaker. The Undertaker's the baby face, and he's going to be fighting from behind and under. How are you going to work that out? You're smaller than him, and you're just reek of babyface yourself. Brett finds a way to do it and make you believe and have you cheering on the Undertaker for a comeback, you know. And then the Bulldog, you know, how do you work a match with somebody who's clearly not all there and you give him one of the best matches he's ever had, which may be kind of an insult to Bulldog, but hey, he had one of the best matches he ever had, and all he had to do was just listen to Brett, you know. So, but I think more people talk about that match, and yeah, if you're wrestling the Undertaker is definitely a smart wrestler. He knows how to wrestle, you know. So I think the only thing that hurts that match is the finish. It ends in a DQ and kind of something that you kind of question the reason why. Like, well, he was just hung up in the ropes, and we've seen Mick Foley get hung up several times, and they just kind of let him out. But for some reason, they say match is over. It doesn't make sense. So I'm going to have to give it to the British Bulldog and Brett for that one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, next we're going to SummerSlam 94, the cage match against Owen. And that match goes up against SummerSlam 91, the Intercontinental title match with Mr. Perfect. Let me start because I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with this since I had both these matches, and something that I failed to mention in my analysis of it, but it was a very comedic moment. I don't think it was necessarily intended, but the way it played out, man, it was hysterical. I had to go back and watch it like 3 times. Even my wife like thought it was so funny. But an interviewer, God, I'm gonna get in trouble for not remembering his name. He's the old English man. Derek, you might remember his name. Alfred, thank you. Alfred Hayes. For some reason, I could not remember. Albert was coming to my. Anyway, Alfred Hayes has got a microphone after the match, and he went straight to Stu Hart. And Brett is starting to make his way after he won towards his parents. And Alfred Hayes is like, "Oh, Stu, how do you feel? You know, you must be so proud of your son." And he goes, and all you hear Stu say is, "Oh, it's wonderful." And then Alfred pulls the mic away from him and he goes, "Oh, he's so overcome with emotion. He doesn't even know what to say." And all the while in the background, you see Stu still talking to an invisible microphone. It was hilarious.
Does nobody like this man? Like, what is wrong?
That's something I wanted to mention because we were placating on everybody hating on Stu Hart. So it was like even Alfred Hayes was in on the whole thing and was just like, "Oh, how do you feel? Oh, no, he's overcome with emotion." Da, 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 da. And you just never hear what he's saying.
I mean, is that just a running joke? Maybe Owen was on it, just like, "Hey, just try to interview my dad and take the mic immediately."
You know what? That would be, knowing what we know, that would be something Owen would be behind. He would talk. I could totally see that, knowing what we know. Oh man, that's one of those things we'd have to find out later on in the afterlife, but we'll do another day. The match itself, if we're going matches, here's what I'm going to say. It's going to kind of be saying the same thing I said with the previous matchup we had. The Owen story was like a great storyline feud put together. I mean, that it was 9 months worth of storytelling to build up to something like this. It was fantastic. And the Mr. Perfect match, there was no build to it at all. Like, this was just one of those moments of like, hey, the fans like this guy. We know he's a kind of a glorified tag team wrestler. We're going to give him an opportunity as a singles guy, and he starts getting some singles wins under his belt. The fans really like him. Hey, we're going to put him in here with Mr. Perfect, and Mr. Perfect was hurt at this time. He suffered a lower back injury, and after this matchup, he was actually retired. Not retired. He took a year off. Essentially is what it is, because we saw him come back when Ric Flair joined the WWF at the time. But this was kind of like a passing of the torch, so to say, from Perfect to Brett. I think the match with Perfect was a better wrestling match, although I think the story with Owen was a better story. Like I mentioned in the cage match, it wasn't what I thought I was going to watch back. I was expecting to see more of a hatred for one another, and I didn't necessarily see the hatred between the two in the cage match. I saw more so, as I mentioned, like these guys were just trying to escape. It didn't look like they were trying to actually beat each other up to really incapacitate one another to where they could get out of the cage. They were just trying to do just enough for just a split second to where they could escape the cage. But the match with Mr. Perfect, these guys were, like I said, this is a traditional classic style wrestling match. And so Mr. Perfect's match is going to be my pick.
I think I'm going to have to go with the Owen match, just because I like the storytelling in that just a little bit more, kind of pushes. I do like those stories, and I think two brothers going at it, and that's not something you see too often. It's very unique where you don't see, it's not a rivalry where they hate each other. They respect each other. They don't want to beat the crap out of each other. They just win as quickly as possible without hurting their brother. I think that's pretty unique and a hard story to tell and get people behind it, and people ate it up. And so I like that. And of course, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, that's a match made in heaven when you think about it. Bret Hart versus him, and it lived up to the hype. But I still I think just the storyline for Owen and Bret better. So.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Sure. All right. Next up. Oh, here's the one, guys. We got the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12 with Shawn against the submission match with Austin at WrestleMania 13.
So true. Mm-hmm.
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 That classic view. Mm-hmm.
I think you know the answer to that. But I mean, yeah, if we were doing the best Stone Cold matches, I would probably argue for WrestleMania 13, but it's the best Bret, and Bret's known for just having really great matches. And I think you have all these names in here who are all excellent technicians. I mean, you have Chris Benoit, Kurt Hennig, Owen Hart, right? And Stone Cold. And a lot of these is either Bret bringing people up or elevating people and trying to reach down. And that's great to do. But the Shawn Michaels and Bret is almost like two stars at the peak of their ability to wrestle. And having them two go at it is something that you cannot, it's hard to find two people on that level that can entertain for that long and do it for that long and tell such a great story where it takes you on this roller coaster of a ride for that long. I don't think too many people can do it. God knows Randy Orton and John Cena tried to do it. And I think every time I'm just like, why do we keep doing this? They're two legends, but they just don't mix. Okay. I don't know why, but these two were meant to do this. I think it was meant to be. So I'm going with that WrestleMania 12 and Shawn Michaels.
Lovely. Just lovely. I hate you both.
I think we both knew where we were at. We respect the other match, but I think we both knew where we were at. So,
man, all right. All right. So let me just try to think out loud here. Let me start with the Austin match. Without Brett, and Derek, you've said this before. Without Brett in this match, giving Austin what he needed to become, what became essentially the next guy for the next era of the company, I think is very telling. And then, as you mentioned that about Austin, I think Brett kind of did the same thing with Shawn. Shawn was a mid card guy, and I just use the term mid card, but Shawn was the next guy, and Brett wasn't really willing to relinquish that spot as the top babyface yet up at that point in time. But right after, not too long after that, he started becoming more of a tweener. Like, there was people that still liked him, but there were people that were kind of like, I don't necessarily hate him, but I don't really like him either. Like, he's okay. And then it wasn't until WrestleMania 13 we spent basically a whole year making Bret Hart like starting to get people to warm up to the idea about Bret Hart becoming a heel. And maybe that was even something that the company was doing, or Vince was trying to do, to get Bret to warm up to the idea to do. We don't know. But I know Bret wasn't too keen on the idea, at least from some of the stuff that I remember from the Wrestling with Shadows documentary. But once we got to that WrestleMania 13 moment with the double turn, I think Bret was all in on the idea of like, you know what? Yeah, I may not be the top babyface, but I can still be one of the top guys and do it in the heel role. And, for what he did in that role, he still was fantastic as people getting to react. And that's something that we learned, as we got older. We started learning more about getting the people to react more so than just being good guy, bad guy, whatever. But I think, to your credit, Houston, what you mentioned, I think this Iron Man match was just something that you can break it apart and you can analyze this thing as a masterclass match. And it's multiple style matches within one. And I think, you can make the argument that without Shawn, Bret wouldn't have this great of a match. And this Iron Man match still to this day is considered the Iron Man match, the best one. And maybe that's even something that we could decipher on a future show. There's a topic right there that we can add to the list. But this, as we said, this being the first Iron Man match, it really sets the bar for everything that we had going forward with Iron Man matches. I just think with the Austin match, it really was good for what it needed to be. I think it's a fantastic story told within a match about how to turn someone. I think the Iron Man match was just a classically done, technically wrestled match that really, I really think that you could put that one up against really anything. Whether if it was an Iron Man match or not, you could put it up against certain street fights, Hell in the Cells. You could argue that one is probably one of the best wrestling matches, period, ever. But with all of that said, I think my decision is going to be the Iron Man match.
All right.
No, I mean, like it's really kind of hard to make the case. Like, I mean, when we did the wheel and these two were put up against each other, you're like, good grief! Like, it's
Mhm.
it's either one of them. Either one of them could win. And as you said,
Yeah.
Houston, this could be the final right here. I mean, we could. I mean, essentially, we could have just chose the winner of the whole thing right now. I mean, we still got a little bit to figure out, but I mean, it's going to be something to see.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Ooh.
Benoit and Bulldog.
Wow.
No, I'm looking at the bracket and I'm trying to decide what my stance is going to be. Like, and like I said before, it just depends on what you want to look at with it. It's kind of
Mhm.
wild. Like, you know, Benoit is a great technical wrestler, a great dance partner, if you will. I'm going to leave
I mean, he really
everything
makes you
alone. I'm
believe
going
he wants to
to.
kill somebody.
God dang it, Houston! I was trying to leave it alone. I was trying to leave it alone. Ah, God.
Sorry, I'm so mature. I'm sorry.
So when it comes to wrestling ability, I'm going to try to get through this. I think Benoit was a fantastic person to have that tribute match with, and you know, again, I think it's just very telling with the Bulldog match of like it. It could have been a dummy he went out there and wrestled a match with. I mean, you know, if you ask certain people, it was, but it 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 still was very telling about how he could go out there and just do everything on the fly on his own and still make this match in front of this audience so spectacular in their minds, and even the same for the people watching at home. um, you know, I wouldn't really necessarily think this, but i I think I'm going to go with the Bulldog match.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, God, I think. Uh, I mean, everybody talks about the Bulldog match
Mhm.
and Brett all the time, and really, when I first saw that match, if you would have told me, uh, British Bulldog was not all there at the time, I wouldn't have believed you. Not until somebody told me is like, now you look for the little details. Okay, that makes sense. But it speaks more again to Bret Hart's ability to he could wrestle a broomstick, and make it an interesting match. That's not to downplay the British Bulldog, but I mean, yeah, he pretty much just told you where to be and what to do, and he made you look like $1,000,000. Um, but the Chris Benoit and Bret Hart is just such, again, like two people at the top of their game really going at it and try to outdo each other. It really was like they were trying to outdo it. It was a friendly competition. The crowd was behind both people. Of course, I think a little bit more behind Brett because given the circumstances, but it was one of those friendly competitions that you just love to see and you don't get to see too often. But I always love technical wrestling more than anything. So I'm going to go with just British or no, Chris Benoit, just because that's my taste. So I almost,
Yeah.
my dyslexia was getting the best of me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, man.
Respectable. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I was about to say, do we even have to ask me? So yeah. Okay. Sean, what do we think? Okay. Ooh. Which,
Jeez.
yeah.
Well, when y'all were in y'all's little side conversation there about what y'all were thinking, I already went and typed in HBK in the bracket. So SummerSlam 1992 Intercontinental Title Match main event in Wembley Stadium. Bret Hart versus the British Bulldog. That matchup goes up against WrestleMania 12 for the WWF Championship, the Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Honestly, like if the submission match and the Iron Man match wouldn't have been pitted up against each other, like we said, I think that might have been the final. Had the bracket been put, in another way. I am not entirely surprised that these are the two matches left standing. These are two very highly regarded matches. Coincidentally, that Bulldog match isn't too much shorter. I mean, I know I said about 40 minutes versus, about an hour and 5 minutes, but, 40 minutes is still a long haul for a wrestling match. For something that really didn't have a time limit, or anything like that. With the Iron Man match, we knew we were going to be in for the long haul on that matchup. We knew we were going to be there for at least an hour. We didn't know that we were going to get a sudden death overtime that was about 5 more minutes, but still, in that Intercontinental match with the Bulldog, that for all we know, first fall to a finish, it could have lasted 10, 15 minutes, something like that. But we were treated, I say treated, that match went 40 some odd minutes. And again, like I said, this match is so highly regarded due to the fact that the audience engagement, this crowd was almost like I said, Rock Hogan, but there was another match that came to mind. It was almost like Rock Austin at 17. It was so white hot for one guy, and not that The Rock was necessarily a heel in that match at 17, but it was just so much so that everybody in that stadium wanted to see Bulldog win in the main event. They wanted to see their hometown guy win. Just like at 17, we wanted to see Austin win, hell or high water, some way. I think with the Iron Man match, man, there was a heated, and as we learn later on, there was a heated real life battle behind the curtain with these two, but there was a competitive feud on screen. Both of these guys, pushing each other to the limit, wanting to be the top guy, wanting to be the guy, to carry the torch for the company. And that was something that motivated both of them. I mean, we saw Shawn in a training. There was a training montage where I'd seen Sean do like an upside down push up on a bar, and that was something that Jose Lothario was like training him. That was my I don't want to say my peak Sean fandom, but I was real hardcore HBK fan at that point in time, and that was something where I wanted to see this guy win. I wanted to see the boyhood dream come true for Shawn Michaels. And, that's something that we got, albeit, come to find out he's a dick in real life at this point. But, I think that match still is just a classic piece of professional wrestling when you incorporate everything. Let's just go incorporate everything. The story. These guys had a story, between the two that was heated for a long time, and it was a little more subtle and a little more slow burn to get to that point. But man, when it got to that point, it just blew up. And when it blew up at that point, it got even worse. It got even more hot after that, as we mentioned, going into the Bret Undertaker match with Shawn being the referee. I mean, that was just a great piece of business, if you will, in the Iron Man match. Like we said, Bret's a one-man show with the Bulldog match. I think that's something that is very admirable to say. And I think if we were to ask Bret, I didn't even think to do this when I met him, a year or so ago. I don't think he would necessarily say that the Bulldog match is his best. I think he would highly regard that one. I think he would highly regard the Iron Man match too. He probably wouldn't have so many nice things to say at Shawn at the time, but I think there's no denying that I just want to say overall, I think the Iron Man match is going to take it for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what? I'm going to turn a 180 on you guys. Nope. I think I'm going to confer to my wall here. Sean, what do you think we should go with? Okay, WrestleMania 12. Okay, so Sean agrees with me. WrestleMania 12. Okay, so I'm going to stick with it. The biggest criticism of WrestleMania 12 Iron Man is it's long and you can't watch it all the time. And I agree with that. But there's a lot of like great movies that are excellent movies, but it's very taxing on you and you can't watch them all the time. Like Mystic River is one of my favorite movies of all time, but it's not something you can watch all the time because it's very emotionally taxing and it's very plotting. And it's just like one of those great, Oscar-worthy movies. They're great, but there's not something you can watch every day like Top Gun or Pacific Rim. Those blockbusters that are just fun, robot smashing things. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that needs to be studied. So, yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. because I was pleasantly surprised with every match that I had. Of course, I've seen the Iron Man match a couple times, and I've seen the Austin 13 match, but all the other ones that I did, I was never a big Bret guy. I came in the WWF right after the Hell in a Cell match. That's when I really started watching, and everything I watch retroactively. But this, I was pleasantly surprised. Everything Bret does, it seems like every match is a little bit different. He caters to that person's style. He's not wrestling the same match every time. And he knows how to hide people's weaknesses and accentuate their strengths, which is not everybody can do that. So, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he owns it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I think that's the biggest drawback is people really harp on. I know like Ric Flair harps on it, and I know several other old timers. Yeah, but did they draw money? You
Mhm.
know, which is hard to put that because a lot of times it depends on what pool they're in and how they're marketed. And if you're not marketed right, and at that time they weren't making as much money, and WWF sucked at their marketing, which hindered, I think, more Brett. Brett couldn't pull that wagon all by himself, and I think that's the only drawback for Brett. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Mm-hmm. Anybody want to talk about the Goldberg match?
Oh, jeez. We almost went the whole show without mentioning it at all.
I'm sorry. I'm always that guy. Yeah.
He was alluding. He was alluding.
Mm-hmm. We
I don't think
could.
we.
I,
I.
I think we could. It'd be
I.
slim
I.
pickings, but I think we could. I mean,
I no, not at all. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think he probably deprived us of Shawn Michaels, Brett, second era, which, Shawn Michaels, different
Yeah,
person.
man,
And then
maybe.
all the other up and coming stars at that time, the John Cena's, the Batistas, were still hot during that time. So I think he deprived us of all that. But yeah, Goldberg, I was a big Goldberg mark back in the day because he's a very believable character. But as you get older, you realize, like, okay, he believes he's this character, but he knows this is wrestling, right? He knows, like, the guy is giving him his body. Like, he's not actually beating the guy. The guy is letting you, okay, you can spear me now. Like, I don't know. It just,
Yeah, I
it still kind
don't
of
think
rubs
he
me the
really
wrong way.
understood that. I don't think he understood that
Yeah.
at the time in WCW. I mean, I think we
Mhm.
saw it a little bit more when he came over to WWE, but in WCW,
Mhm.
like you said, I don't think he realized that there was an element of predetermination to this all. Like,
Yeah.
we are making you look like this colossal badass, like you can pick up and just have your way with anybody, but they're allowing you to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's like kind of like William Regal when he had the match with Regal. Regal went out there to kind of prove a point. Like, all right, you're a badass, but you know what? You can't wrestle. I'm about to show you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. And he made him look silly.
but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to mention this one this upcoming week, this Thursday, down at Houston Premier Arena. We got Texas Contender Series with Super Texas Contender Series number 5. We have a stacked card coming to you live on IWTV. That's the IWTV app, or you can check it out on independentwrestling.tv. That is Texas Contender Series. It is under the New Texas Pro Wrestling banner, so it is the NXT, if you will, of New Texas Pro Wrestling. So that is Super Texas Contender Series 5 this Thursday, June the 13th at Houston Premier Arena. Tickets you can find available at New Texas Pro, or you can come to the Houston Premier Arena and get your tickets at the door, only starting at $5. Best $5 your money can buy for professional wrestling.
No, not bad. Yeah. Yeah, don't wrestle Goldberg.